review show around, and the most humble, I think. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, we have two comedic giants, literally and figuratively. We have Leo Kearse and Scott Capurro. How are you both?
All right.
Yes. You look as if you've just been dragged back from your holidays, both of you.
Just getting ready for summer.
Are you okay? You've been off a bit. You're a bit poorly.
Yeah, I just had a bit of a cold.
Yeah, not the heavy-duty throat lozenge job. Some people have been really sweating it lately. I'm a bit anxious about that one.
Well, I mean, it was man flu, so we can't underestimate the severity.
Have you managed to dodge all of this, Scott?
Yes, I was in the Czech Republic telling jokes.
Were you really?
They import their comedians there, obviously.
Yeah.
And, especially like me, a Jewish one, because they've run out. It was great there, though. It was really mountainous.
There's a tradition of dissident comedy in the Czech Republic, isn't there, being used to bring down authorities and so on?
I think they played along too much, actually. In fact, when I went to leave, they were like, bye-bye, and I'm like, you might watch that. Brings back some painful memories for people like me. Right,
let's have a quick peek at Wednesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail up first. Bullish Boris up for the fight. Meanwhile, a picture of Gwyneth Paltrow is also up for a fight of a slightly less momentous nature. The Guardian. Johnson faces fight for political survival at Partygate hearing, and there once again is Gwyneth Paltrow, universally acknowledged to be more picturesque than the ex-Prime Minister. The Financial Times, falling life expectancy triggers delay to raising of state pension age to 68. If you think that's bad, you should move to France. The Telegraph, hypocrite, Starmer to avoid tax on pension. The Times, pill and coil, not a new double act, but contraceptive methods shown to raise breast cancer risk. And the Daily Star, as ever, go their own way. Pinocchio, I'm not a liar, I'm just a moron. There he is, that's Boris's defence. Precede with a degree of liberal margin there by the Star. Those were your front pages. Paraphrase, that's the word I wanted, not précis. So let's kick things off with the front page of the Daily Mail, Leo.
So the front page of the Daily Mail, they've got a picture of Gwyneth Paltrow wearing a big long coat. She sort of looks like two children, when they sit on each other's shoulders to get to the cinema for the price of one ticket.
Those are not her legs, are they?
She needs to eat a meal. Look how skinny she is. From top to bottom, she's the same width.
Yeah. Apparently she hit somebody.
Coat.
She hit somebody when she was skiing, clattered into them and did them damage. I'd have thought she'd just bounce off. But the main story is Boris. It says, bullish Boris up for the fight, which is a classic Daily Mail sort of rabble-rousing Boris headline. So apparently Partygate, the people are saying Partygate is gonna bring Boris Johnson down. I don't think they've heard. He's already been brought down. He's not Prime Minister anymore. This is like shutting the stable door after the horses bolted and burning the stable down, and you don't need to.
But is the incentive to try and have him lose his constituency, be out of Parliament altogether? Would that actually help Labour?
So he could be suspended or even expelled from Parliament. And Boris has come back and said, he did mislead Parliament over because he said he didn't break any rules, and then it later transpired that he had broken some rules, but the rules were all stupid and nobody knew what they were.
Some laws, his own.
But the question is, which his defence is, not to say whether it's true or not, whether or not he had been misled as to what the rules were. Now, you might say, well, he should not have relied on anybody else's advice, but that's his argument.
They were actually his laws that he had passed.
Yeah, but
and he'd gone, actually, if you remember, on television every night for about a week, barking the laws at people and telling them what they should do and how they should behave. And then he didn't just mislead the Parliament, he actually broke his own laws.
He ran a speakeasy, didn't he? And there was a red stripe in a bucket.
He had a birthday cake. He had a birthday cake at work. I mean, he couldn't do the working from home over Zoom thing. No. He had to actually...
Well, we've seen the photos of him in the courtyard, too, having drinks with people.
Do you feel, this is just like you personally, but do you feel that the transgressions were just him wanting to enjoy himself, or that he was trying to run a team who were working long hours and allowing them a little bit of latitude?
I think he does what he wants, and I don't think he's someone who ever thinks he does anything wrong.
Right.
I don't think that he understands why people are going after him still. I don't think that he sees that what he did was incorrect at all. And I think that he's finding this quite demeaning, and he's wondering why they're making him break his long tour of $1 million gigs that he's doing across the world.
That is interesting. I mean, if he's not, unless he thinks he is going to come back and be Prime Minister again, which of course that is currently the sort of
it's
the
not
mode,
going to happen.
Isn't it?
He's so last decade.
I mean, it would be a way for the Tory party to win the next election.
Well, I would have thought 6 months ago that might have been the case, but actually
I agree with
quite
you.
boringly successful. Anyway, let's have a look at The Guardian, Scott.
Yes, doubts over UK claim of perfect war against ICE. The UK still claims that they have 100...
State.
Pardon me?
Islamic State.
Islamic State.
Yes.
Apparently, the UK government is still claiming that they didn't kill any civilians during the Islamic State bombings in Iraq. And it's come out recently from a non-profit watchdog, Air Wars, that might not be the case. Okay. And they may have killed some people who or injured as well. Some of the victims are still alive and still claim that they saw the planes dropping the bombs.
So they were claiming a clean sheet.
Yes, 100% well done. Greg Bagwell, a retired air marshal, said that has always said that was a stretch, that 90% good record in Iraq would have been fine, and that the British government is still claiming 100% is really incorrect.
No weddings, at least.
Well,
by comparison with the American Air Force.
But no, the American Air Force has never claimed to not have killed people. They've always said that they did, and they've apologized for it.
Yes. What do you think, Lou?
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous to bomb an urban area with civilians in it and to say that your bombs only took out enemy combatants. I mean, I just think it shows we should just leave the Middle East alone. Just don't get involved in their dramas. Just let them, sort it out themselves. We don't need their oil anymore. We're all going to be driving electric cars.
Well, I mean, you're putting that in slightly comical terms, but I do remember there was a candidate for Prime Minister who said exactly that, Jeremy Corbyn, not very long ago. That was his record, and it had been his record.
Jeremy Corbyn, that was funded by Iran state broadcaster. No connection to the Middle East there.
No, but he was absolutely an isolationist.
That's why
he said that we shouldn't get involved.
And that's why he doesn't want it bombed because he's making money out of it. He needs the funds. Take him off the air.
What about Libya? Do you think we should have bombed Libya?
Well, I mean, the Middle East it's a difficult, and North Africa, it's a difficult thing because we went in with good intentions. We're trying to support the Arab Spring and the people, the uprising. But then things got complicated very quickly. ISIS were fighting alongside the uprising. So
and regime change is never really maybe a good idea. I don't know. We're going to talk about Bolton later, and that was all about him a regime change in Libya. It didn't really work out.
Interesting. In the last couple of weeks, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but we're coming up to, I guess it's the 20-year anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, the shock and awe. And there's been a lot of re-examination of what the commentariat was saying about it at the time, and the extent to which there was liberal support for it in America is quite shocking.
Well, we saw the statue fall down in the U.S., and I think Americans got excited because they thought, oh, finally, that lunatic has been taken down. Maybe there's a chance.
I mean, the great folly of sort of neocon Westerners is thinking that if we just bomb Iraq, this Western liberal democracy will arise from the ashes.
Like watercress. Soaked paper towel. Let's look at Wednesday's Financial Times now, Leo.
So this is the one about the falling life expectancy triggers delay to the raising of state pension age to 68. So they've delayed plans to raise the pension age to 68 in the UK, probably from looking across the English Channel to see what's happened in France, where Macron just raised it. He just raised it to 66, which is what our pension age is right now. So they've got riots in France at the moment, and it's difficult to riot when you're on a Zimmer frame. So full respect to those
66 in French years. I wonder if that is the same age as us, because I don't know if they age differently. Do they possibly? They have a lot more sun and wine and good food.
So they look more leathered, but they're healthier
inside. But they're
actually
healthier, They probably look forward to their retirement a good deal more than we do.
We're just going to be in a shoebox in Birmingham or something.
No hurry.
They do have Nice. I mean, they do have some nice things to look forward to. You can joke about that. They have Nice. They have lovely places to go to in retirement. But I have a lot of friends who retire there. But they also do. They do prepare their entire life for that retirement. It's a really important thing in France. And also they're expecting, I think, more tax dollars to come from corporations and not from people working longer. That's what they're angry about.
Yeah, that's true. It is obviously, it's more to do with the fiscal arrangements and so on, isn't it? But there is a sort of tradition also, isn't there? I picture the French retirement as being like the Corleone retirement, just playing in a vineyard with your grandson until you keel over with a heart attack.
Wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
I know he's not French, but that's how I picture everything south of the Channel.
I think it's a lot of
ours is just embittered, sitting there staring out the front window.
I think that
children throwing litter in your
part of the problem of France is they have such a good healthcare system. People live a lot longer there.
Yeah, I'm off. Toads, we're in this section. Let's take a look at Wednesday's Times, Scott.
The pill and coil shown to raise breast cancer risk. Apparently, taking a pill, a contraceptive, as an oral contraceptive, has a 20 to 30% higher risk of breast cancer, particularly in older women. So breast cancer is the most common cancer worldwide for women, and this study was done by the Cancer Research UK that stated that women are putting themselves at risk, although Cancer Research then went on to say women can control more so their risk of breast cancer with their diet, with their weight, not drinking, not smoking, which all that kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, because the dietary claim has never really been proven.
No.
It kind of puts the responsibility on the cancer patient, which seems unfair to me. And I think what they might think about doing is finding maybe a contraceptive taken orally that doesn't increase women's.
I mean, it's been around for a long time, and it has still stayed pretty much as it did when it came out in the 60s, and it is massively disruptive, without sort of going into details. I know a lot of anecdotal evidence of women who find it really sort of...
It is, and I don't know why men don't just tie the string. I don't know why men just take it upon themselves. But once they do have kids, once you've had your couple of kids, then tie it up.
In a few years' time, everyone will get pregnant using IVF. Men will deposit sperm at the beginning of their adult lives, which will be kept frozen for them. They will then tie the knot. Women will deposit eggs.
Excellent.
Same thing. And when you want to have children, you will go down
push
there.
a button.
And it'll be in a robot.
They will fertilise about a couple of dozen eggs, and you will go, I'll have that one, the tall one with the blue
pretty
eyes.
one.
Well,
exactly.
I've noticed a lot of modern women are using their personalities as a contraceptive.
In your case, at least, I'm sure you experience that a lot.
You're married now, Leo. You have a child.
Yeah,
so the sex is over.
I think everybody should have babies. We shouldn't be having contraceptives and stuff. Everybody should have babies. It's the greatest thing that can happen.
But if you could, the thing with IVF is, of course, you can make sure you don't get a naughty one and all these sort of things. And so having children will become a much more, and also it can be like brought up in a sort of, they do it in an air fryer or something now, don't they, the first sort of 6 months.
Save on dental care, they'll have nice teeth from the word go. It'll be good.
Right, that's the papers out of the way. Join us after the break. We have Ramadan breaks in football. Biden explores the COVID lab leak and how to reset your sense of self. See you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, Leo Kearse and Scott Capurro. So, Leo, times first. Sleepy Joe has been biding his time, but it sounds like he's finally pulled the trigger.
Yeah, so he's ordered the release of files on the lab leak theory for the origin of COVID. This is the intelligence is going to release all available material on the origin of the deadly virus, which has killed more than 1.1 million Americans, apparently, or dead-headed, really, because a lot of them were just about to go.
Like that. Dead-headed, nice.
Yeah.
81 years old. Yeah.
But he says, this is what Biden said. He said, we need to get to the bottom of COVID-19's origins, including potential links to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, just a few weeks ago, we were being castigated, GBNews was being castigated for discussing this as a possible viable theory. And now, of course, it's come out the FBI, various other intelligence agencies have said, no, this is the most likely source of the virus. So it's interesting to be vindicated like that.
Are you taking responsibility for it? That this is the origin of the information started here.
Well, I don't know.
It's interesting. This was a far right conspiracy theory.
It was exactly.
I wonder what
other
far right conspiracy theories are going to come true next week.
I did also notice, even it's the Times, isn't it? It's reported it, although I expect it's elsewhere as well. But even the Times, they say the FBI think that it's with like limited certainty. They think it's a lab leak.
Yeah.
And then they go on to say, but other government agencies still think it's as if the FBI are isolated. The FBI are one of, I think there's 9 government agencies that have an intelligent, informed view on this.
But
and the majority of those who've expressed an opinion now think it's the lab leak.
But the FBI are famous for not sharing the information with other agencies within the U.S. government or within other governments.
Bit like the Chinese.
Hello. It started in a lab from a creature, right?
Yeah. Oh, so it's like whatever.
Yeah.
He said, she said.
Yeah, like that.
Well, I remember the New York Post, right after COVID came out, the New York Post ran a story about how technicians at the Wuhan lab were selling cadavers of the animals down at the wet market for people to eat, which is an obvious route for transmission.
The second shoe, then, if it does prove that this becomes the overwhelming likely, is the degree to which Fauci is implicated, right? Because he had commissioned or funded or directed some of the research there. Yeah. And that's the bit that they really don't want to complete.
Right.
That's the suspicion that that the Democrats and the administration generally have been trying to keep it suppressed.
Yeah.
But it is weird, isn't it? If you let the air out slowly enough. I mean, this would have been absolutely explosive a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, this would have been the brink of World War III. Nothing's changed.
Maybe we'll find out about the HIV/AIDS thing after all this.
Yeah.
So that'd be nice.
Oh, I think I know where that
then, yeah, Fauci has a lot of blood on his hands over that one too.
Daily Mail now. Premier League matches to be paused so players can have a bit of breakfast. Seems reasonable.
Yes, so referees in the Premier League and English Football League have reportedly been asked to pause evening games during Ramadan to allow players to break their fast.
Yeah.
I mean, this seems to be, making a lot of changes to accommodate a religious belief. Can you imagine me in Saudi Arabia at the equivalent of a football match, a public stoning, demanding that they stop so I can make a pancake because it's pancake day? I don't think they'd let me.
Make a pancake. I think the thing I find a bit odd is some of them are only saying they just need to take on some fluids because they're not even allowed to drink. But you think that's reasonable. But then players do that all the time on the pitch anyway. They're squirting that stuff in their mouth.
And also,
Excuse me. I think
need the flu.
Right. No, I think they actually need like a minute where they can actually get a lot of. Hydrate a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a minute seems reasonable, I suppose. I don't know.
I know.
Better than them dying on the field, I think.
Are they going to stop to let other players pull Christmas crackers? I mean, why? You know for a fact they wouldn't do this for Christians. They're not going to be like, let's practice. Let's have a harvest festival in the middle.
Yeah, but Christian players who play on Easter, they don't care or whatever. They make some.
I'm not sure they should be playing players who have fasted and not drunk anything all day.
Yeah.
It feels to me like that's quite a significant concern. I don't know if it's the thing happens in the first minutes or the 80th minute, but if you've had to play a full half of football having not drunk anything all day,
that's what they're worried about.
Isn't it?
Is their hearts exploding or whatever is going to happen?
Yeah. And then people will start a conspiracy theory about that.
About that, exactly, yeah.
Worrying. Telegraph now, and an exclusive for them, John Bolton, Trump's former, I don't know, was it like a defence minister or whatever?
National Security Advisor.
National Security Advisor. He says Trump 2.0 would be a disaster.
John Bolton was Trump's National Security Advisor and bitter grapes grower because he claims now that Trump is garbage after he, sat on his lap for 2 years while Trump was in there. It's so hilarious. Bolton is just angry because Trump has called him reckless and useless and fired him and humiliated him in the international market. Although
they did kind of work together on the Iran. They were on lockstep on that.
Well, so to speak. I mean, Bolton is a real foreign policy hawk, and he was and he's really is supportive in regime change, changing regimes in Iran, Syria, Libya, and now he's saying that Trump is a national danger, and he will he endangers U.S. safety and security. And he says he was the one who did it for 2 years, and continues to do it.
Yeah, he's more. But this is one of the things. There's a lot of people on the left, yourself included, who are very concerned about Trump or find him ridiculous. But what's interesting is there's also a lot of people on the right in the Republican Party
who don't want him,
who don't like the fact that he tends to be non-interventionist militarily.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a more significant aspect of him for the world.
And also, he's very socially liberal.
Yeah.
So on a lot of social issues, he's too far to the left for a lot of Republicans.
Although, ironically, he did tell the Pentagon when he was being shown around during his first candidacy. He did keep saying, well, if there's a problem, can't we just nuke them? And Pentagon generals kept saying, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. And really, not really an option. So I don't know how non-hawkish, as you're saying, he is, or how isolationist he is as a president.
I think it's quite interesting in this country. It's probably very different in America, and certainly for his base. But in this country, the reporting on Trump so emphasised, so focused on social faux pas, grotesque behaviour, various scandals. You had almost no sense of any sort of policy at all.
But he didn't have any either. And when he was asked questions, he pointed to other people. He gave Bolton a lot of power and then took it away from him. I think the problem with Trump was...
And also he fired people because he didn't
fill their positions.
He drained the swamp.
What he was a stand-up comedian, and people kept forgetting that. Yeah. That's why the shirt was out of place. That's why the hair is a bit ridiculous. That's why he looked a bit crazy, and the wife seemed out of place as well.
So what would you say to the... there are people still saying, I don't know whether it's dying down now, there are people still saying that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine on Trump's watch.
No. Putin has said that, and I think that's why people repeat it. But who knows?
No, but I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that you wouldn't do something like that with somebody as crazy as Trump in the seat, and that's why maybe we need insane leaders.
Well, you've got to have already. You've got to have more insane than they are, right? Yeah. And you work with North Korea.
Well, Braverman's up there. She's pretty nuts. Woo, she's crazy.
I don't think she's going to be PM. You never know. Times now, Leo. It turns out Timothy Leary was right all along.
Yeah, so psychedelic drugs reset the sense of self for people with depression. I don't know if this is based on Prince Harry's book, but Prince Harry certainly spoke about, taking mushrooms and how it helped him sort of self-medicate through his depression. But yeah, they're looking at new treatments from mushrooms, and also the substance they're looking at here is dimethyltryptamine.
DMT, yeah.
DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca, which is used in rainforest retreats where you imbibe it, and over the course of 48 hours you vomit. And
you vomit a lot.
The lizard people and stuff. But now you can just smoke it in a pipe.
Well, they say the ayahuasca trip is
that.
actually, I mean, you do have a long period there where the scene and setting and all the rest of it, but the actual trip is about half an hour. This is one of the weird things with DMT. It's incredible. I'm not taking it. I wouldn't rule it out, but I have not yet done it. But it's incredibly intense, but very short, whereas acid can last for like a whole day and really be exhausting.
They used to call DMT the businessman's trip because you can do it in a lunch break. Just put your briefcase down. And
there's been very interesting stuff written about it. Not so much about the therapeutic, but about people going to, have an extraordinary sense. Quite often replicated recognisably from one person to the next of very specific experiences.
And they go on retreats and they tend to do it 2 or 3 times a day with the same group of people over a 4 or 5 day period.
Yeah.
And then what they like to do 6 months or a year later is get together with those same people. And the only relationship they have with these people is when they're either preparing to be high, they're high, or they're recovering.
Right. That's most of my friends.
But it tends to, I think, open people up to a bit of intimacy conversation, which they may not have otherwise.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole book. Michael Pollan wrote a book, the guy who's mostly written about food and about whole foods and the benefits of good diet. He wrote a book called something like Now You Can Change Your Brain or something like that. And it's all about the use of psychedelics as in therapy. And apparently it's a massively...
A lot of my friends in California, every time I run into them on the street when I'm back there, I'm like, have you been on vacation? No, I'm taking acid with my therapist.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing it. Human growth hormone and hallucinogens.
I think it's kind of oversold. The sort of people say they have this rhapsodical religious experience when they do DMT. I did it. I did it in Darius's mum's living room. And my mate's mum's living room, and you're sort of, you blast off into space, and you're completely like, it's not like mushrooms or anything like that. You're completely out there. But when I came back round, I hadn't had this like religious experience. I just realised I got a bit fat. So I looked down and I was like, I'm a bit fat now.
Maybe, without wishing to blow smoke up your rear end, you're already quite sorted. Maybe you didn't have anything that really needed unknotting.
Well, or maybe you were already fat. Could be that too.
I think it's time for a contractually obligated break. I don't think we'll have time to do any DMT, but maybe a cuppa. After that's out of the way, we've got mystery of Prince Harry's US visa, why China is actually the happiest country on earth, and why you shouldn't give birth in Glasgow. See you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Headliners. We'll go straight to the Mail now for the beginning of the third section, the mystery of Prince Harry's US visa. Scott.
Thanks for calling me a male. People do forget sometimes. People want to know, how did Harry get his visa? They've read his book, and in his book, in his book, he talks about doing drugs. And so the Heritage Foundation wants to know...
Which, considering he is basically just growing organs, should Prince William ever need them? That's the premise of the book.
Exactly. You're right.
Responsible, isn't it?
I know.
Anyway,
how dare he dry his liver and kidney when we might need them later?
Would you take the hair, though?
Well, the Heritage Foundation wants to see the visa application to see if he lied on it. But the U.S. government doesn't release things like that. They certainly won't. And so they're asking this government to come forward and say, did he answer those questions? Sometimes the questions are asked, and if they're answered in a way that the person obviously has done drugs, the U.S. government might not permit them in, or they might. I mean, in the case of celebrities who have said they smoked weed, like Nigella Lawson, inevitably she did get in. In that same year, in 2014. I think it's seen as if the person is important enough to let in, if it benefits the U.S. government in some way.
They literally ask you, have you ever taken drugs?
Of course they do.
And then, in principle, they can not allow you in on that basis?
Of course they can.
I don't know that we do that, do we? I don't think we do.
I don't know. We just let everybody in.
You got a boat, sail in?
Are you going to sell drugs?
Are you literally taking drugs right
A nice bottle of wine? Come on in. And people also want to know what kind of visa Harry has. They're wondering if he has an extraordinary ability or O1 visa that has allowed him in, or if he's in as a spouse with his wife. No one knows. I don't know why people are concerned about this. He's in, so nothing's going to happen.
People are trying to pretend like there's not some privilege that goes with this kind of stuff. But I suppose it causes him a certain amount of discomfort. It's quite funny.
Yeah, but this sort of thing can become politicised, and then somebody who wants to make a point can expunge him from the country.
It is interesting. I thought I didn't read the book, although obviously it sold fantastically well for all that we mocked it. But it does feel like he's going to endlessly be digging around for the next bit of salacious tittle-tattle he can use to sell. Yeah. Because it's always the case, isn't it? You're looking for the next high.
But he's really connected, so there's a lot of information.
But he might sooner or later say something about his own background or about some event that, he sees through his personal frame that really will cause him...
But he's surrounded by minders that are looking after every word he speaks.
Right.
They all are.
Yeah.
But if he tries to get adopted by a new family, they're going to be suspicious.
Yeah, they will. Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. Happiness news now, Leo, and in direct contravention of yesterday's news, I don't know if you were watching the show last night, but it seems that liberal democracies are not the happiest places on earth, in fact.
Yes, they've done a survey around the world, and Chinese people are the happiest people in the world, with 9 in 10 claiming that they're satisfied with all aspects of their life, including relationship, work and politics. 1 in 10 was sent to the gulag for giving the wrong answer.
Please take the gun away from my head. I've answered correctly, right? Can I see my mom again?
Number 2 was Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Can you return my children?
It is funny, though. I don't know whether this is not the same survey, clearly, but maybe there's a time of year when they come out for the beginning of spring. There was a survey we did yesterday, and it was rather more plausibly Finland, Sweden, Norway, Israel, and I think Lithuania had just come up hard or something.
Yeah.
That made
Always
the most
Finland,
case.
Yeah.
Big Nordic countries with good welfare states.
Yeah. Free higher education.
Yeah. But getting through sort of 6 months of darkness, I was quite impressed by that. But
well, I guess we've got Netflix now, but only 70% of Britain said that they were satisfied, and that's a fall of 13 points on the previous survey, which is pretty substantial.
That just means the government is no longer quite as threatening. People can at least complain in this country now.
In a way, if you could complain about your government, they took your kids away, that might be a relief for some people as well.
Yeah. You never know, though. Human beings are odd. I mean, I know I would prefer to live in a liberal democracy, having always basically done so and taken these rights for granted. But it is conceivable that people in North Korea experience a kind of thing that they might think is happiness.
No, you're wrong about that. But I think in China maybe they do. And their GDP is about 9 times higher than ours. So you can imagine being 9 times more wealthy.
Not per person.
Not per person, but they have gone up. This is one thing I definitely do believe about human beings, is that we only really register the trend, the direction of travel. If your life is getting better by 5 points of GDP year on year for 6 or 7 years in a row, that's pretty good, genuinely, because you can literally remember not having enough to eat, and now you basically have food in the fridge.
It's hard to be miserable toasting champagne in the jacuzzi.
Yeah.
That's really
well, it's poor little rich girl, isn't it? I mean, they go spinning off the rails.
Prince Harry manages it.
Guardian now, and I see they've described this latest Ugandan legislation as controversial, Scott.
Well, yes. Human rights campaigners are condemning a bill introduced in Uganda to imprison homosexuals or kill them. The LGBT community is up in arms, but only a little bit, because they don't want their hands cut off, because 389 legislators voted late on Tuesday in a hardline anti-homosexual bill. But, I mean, that's basically because Uganda is one of the poorest and least developed countries in the world. Almost half the population lives in poverty.
It's extremely conservative, especially
because their government is so unstable and the economy is completely unpredictable. They have everything they need. They have amazing, fantastic farmland and all the resources necessary. But the government has no idea how to govern, and so they just blame the queers. And this is
and also they kicked out, I believe, Yasmin Alibi Brown, didn't they? Which was everything spiralled out of control after that.
I mean, you say it's related to their poverty, but what about Saudi Arabia, which is a very rich nation and has very high levels of homophobia?
Well, that's maybe a more cultural, religious thing as well.
I mean, it would be difficult to unpick it entirely, but you're right. It's not necessarily a bad country. We have some neighbours who went over there. They were medics and they'd gone to work on a sort
Never
of
came back.
field hospital type arrangement. But they say it's absolutely beautiful.
Gorgeous,
beautiful.
beautiful.
Everyone's very happy. It doesn't feel like an oppressive state.
Right.
Obviously, with
Unless you're walking out of a gay bar and someone was accusing you.
well, I guess the thing is, again,
feels
it's this
oppressive.
kind of weird thing about happiness, which is, again, not to condone it, but I suppose if there is absolutely no wriggle room at all, there are no people who are feeling oppressed because they're gay. They just can't be gay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what...
Well, apparently there is an LGBT community there who are feeling threatened. At least that's what this article said. But I can imagine that they might use that excuse, as they do, like you said, in countries like Saudi Arabia, to imprison and kill people.
Yeah.
Just the label, the finger pointing is enough.
I wonder where they stand on the trans, because, funnily enough, some of the more religiously conservative countries like Iran are very big on trans, aren't they? Because they think it's an alternative.
Or the NHS here.
Yeah.
Quite big on it.
Guardian now, and apparently you can get 3D printed cake, Scott. What's that all about?
Well, they found a way to make a cake with a 3D printer, a cheesecake, several layers of which seem super sweet to me. But anyway, it's hard to describe. You have to look at the article.
It's a nozzle.
Yes, these tubes are squeezing out each layer based on what the printer is telling them. So in a 3D form, you don't need a baker, you don't need the equipment, you just need the printer, and that's what you get.
What it is, I had a look at some YouTube clips of this. The first thing I want to say is that the earliest ones are at least 8 years old. They've been promising workable, viable 3D cake for a very long time. Obviously, its failings come through. But it's not, it's not like a technological miracle. It's basically just an automatic nozzle that a sort of liquid cake is squirted
But what they were
out.
trying to do away with was equipment and cooks, which they have done.
I don't think it's 3D printing. It's a bit like when they just call a cash till AI. Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on.
Some 3D printing, depending on the material.
Yeah.
Maybe cream cheese isn't the best material for doing intricate sculptures, but some 3D printing can be really good for replacing machine parts and
to make a gun.
Well, there's one video on YouTube which is worth watching where a woman has mastered the art of using a 3D printer to create incredible cakes. But what she does is she creates a mould with a 3D printer, which she then peels off the thing and then bakes the cake in that mould, and so you get extraordinary shape. She can make the cake look as if it's just a bunch of cherries, but when you cut into it, it's actually cake. And she's done that using a mould with a 3D printer, but it's not the same as making the cake with it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like this, it really annoys me.
All right. I know what you mean,
and we should be moving away from processed food instead of processing it even further.
Although I think
they're going to use this machinery to make 3D burgers. I mean, and out of exactly.
It's astronaut food, and then we'll all be living on it soon.
We seem to have got another break already. Coming up, intergenerational fat shaming, court-mandated rudeness, and diverse Dickens. See you in a couple of minutes. And welcome back for the final fun sector of tonight's show. We kick off with the Metro and Scotch news now. It seems if you are Scottish, you're already living on borrowed time, Liam.
Yeah, we already knew this. So people born in the richest parts of the UK are likely to live longer than people born in Glasgow. 12 years longer. If you're born in Hampstead in North London, you'll have a life expectancy of 88, while people raised in Glasgow will live to 76. So hopefully I'll make it to the end of the show. 76 seems quite high for Glasgow. I thought it'd be around, in the 50s somewhere. Certainly, there's certainly a litany of health failures under the SNP. We've seen drug deaths. Drug deaths are 3.5 times higher in Scotland than in the rest of the UK.
I don't know whether they failed to address that, whether it's got worse, but when I was growing up, it was understood that the Goebbels area and so on was like one of the most... Goebbels was the German...
Germany.
There was a sort of... I don't know. It was an unknown, but it had a reputation for being pretty rough. I don't know if that's still true or whether this...
Yeah, and I think there's certainly concentrated... a lot of people in Glasgow, a lot of people in Scotland live healthy lives, and, eat healthy food, but there's certainly cultures in Scotland of eating just the most abysmally unhealthy food. You would not believe the stuff people eat, deep-fried cheeseburgers and all this kind of stuff. Everything's deep-fried, and then you're just drinking fizzy pop and you're taking drugs and getting drunk, and there's real poverty of aspiration. People don't have anything to live for, so they just treat their bodies like...
It's interesting how you can can get a kind of a deluded view of a place. Sometimes if you visit it frequently enough, you start to believe that you understand a place. I go up to Edinburgh like pretty much annually, for the last 25 years to the festival.
Yeah.
And they all seem pretty healthy to me, Those are the people who live in Edinburgh. They walk up and down hills in stout clothes,
basically England. So.
Yeah, exactly. Go, I think everything's fine, nothing to worry about.
I was just in Glasgow. They have more vegan restaurants per capita than any other large city in Europe.
That's how bad the diet is.
That's how terrible the food is. I thought the same thing. Oh, it's awful.
Wednesday's Mail now. Let's talk about intergenerational fat shaming, Leo.
So overweight women may have their mothers to blame, according to this study. So mothers have huge influence over how their children turn out, the sort of behaviours, if they run around, if they're active, and what they eat. But also, the study shows that if the mothers were overweight or didn't have a healthy diet during pregnancy, they sort of program the child in the womb to be unhealthy and be biologically more at risk of obesity. I don't know, I think the study's just another thing, giving excuses to women. It doesn't affect sons, interestingly.
They're more active when they're kids, so that's why, isn't it?
It's an horrific thing to tell a woman that she's given birth to a child and now that, her I suppose a certain amount of self-indulgent behaviour when you're pregnant is understandable, isn't it? Some people, you're not allowed to smoke or drink anymore. You might turn to cream cakes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women do sort of kid themselves they're eating for two, even though one of them is the size of a broad bean.
Apparently you only need an extra, 200 calories or something?
Goes up to at some point,
yeah.
But it's very tempting because you kind of feel fat and stupid and lazy. It's a kind of difficult time.
A friend of mine was on a treadmill when she was pregnant, and then her daughter was suicidal. So it's never right, is it? You just got.
But horrible to know that you could pre-program. I guess I've heard that if you get very stressed out during pregnancy as well, you can kind of pass on a preponderance for anxiety to your child and all these sort of things.
My sister was super stressed during her pregnancy, and still when I go to hug my niece, she's like, every time I'm like, I'm your uncle.
That's what it was.
I'm your gay uncle. I got no things going on. She's very stressful.
Take your hands off me. American news now in the Times, Scott. I would imagine this warms the cockles of your patriotic heart.
I just want that Christmas gift back that I gave her. So thankless. Court backs Americans' right to be rude in town meetings. At a public meeting in a small town in Massachusetts, Lois Baron started to scream at the board members about a law that had been passed that she didn't like, and she called one of the board members, "You're a Hitler," because that's what everybody is when they disagree with you. And that board member said, "You're disgusting," and had her dragged out. And she took that board member, because they said, you can't come back to any more board meetings, small town, they all know each other, and she took that guy to court, and she won.
Excellent. And she's an old lady now, isn't she? I don't know.
She's 71, I think.
For a while.
And she said, look, we can say what we like. That's the whole point of public discourse in this country.
I read the story. The first thing, the argument brewed, she said this council, or whatever, this municipality, spends like a drunken sailor.
Yes,
now, I think that's quite a good phrase. I think that stung. And they tried to have her thrown out for saying that.
Yes.
And that's when she said you're like a Hitler.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is actually perfectly fair.
But he did yell at her, and you're disgusting. It's like, well, you said that to her.
That's worse, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
It is a big part of the American tradition, isn't it, to speak in the town hall?
It is. Like, I think people enjoy going, and one of the reasons they do go is they hope something like this kicks off.
So it's always my favourite scene in The Simpsons when they go to the big town hall. The mayor is trying to defend.
It makes politics interesting. I think, if we had more hectoring like that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We need more town halls. There's... Do you know Claire Fox's Battle of Ideas and Institute of Ideas things? They have debates sometimes, and it's mainly in London, but they take them out on the road sometimes. They're fantastic. People come in and turn out to be surprisingly well-informed and passionate about things that you might think they're just allowed to wash over them. But that is actually democracy working properly instead of voting once every 5 years.
Especially local politics. People get really worked up, as they should.
As they should. So more power to our elbow. Over to the Times now. They have great expectations for what might be achieved with a bit of clever casting, Leo.
So the star of Great Expectations, he's a black rapper who's starring as Mr. Jaggers in Great Expectations. He says that casting people of colour in period dramas is realistic rather than woke. I'm not sure how realistic it is. I mean, if you're going back to a period where there weren't really many black people and playing a character who wasn't originally black.
Well, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but they seem to be drugging a lot of statistics out now to support the idea that there were some black people and also some people of North African, Arabic origin or whatever. That they've got a figure of 15,000 that's being bandied around. I don't know how many that's out of. I mean, I'd be quite surprised.
That's like about 3 days' worth of boats these days. That's not a huge number of people.
I don't think many of them were working as senior lawyers. That's the key.
I think when he said
lawyer.
that remark, I assumed he meant in modernizing the drama.
Yeah.
They are making it more ratio realistic to what Britain is now.
Well, no, but he's not. He is genuinely justifying it by saying London was more like that then than we have been told.
He said that?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you know that,
he may be right.
I read this really interesting book about the U.S. that might have been similar. In various periods of time, there were definitely more ethnic communities involved in higher positions of power that have simply been erased from history books because various laws were passed that were meant to erase them in the U.S. Now, that might or might not have happened here. But I know that women in the arts, definitely in the arts and in playwriting, and painting have been erased from
That's true. There's a massive campaign. If you listen to Radio 3 now, they play a lot of female composers, for instance, which 10 years ago you wouldn't have heard.
That's a bad example, but yes.
And a lot of Cockneys can trace their heritage back to, to previous generations of immigrants, so from Turkey or Cyprus or Greece or whatever.
Yeah.
But then, being in London after a few generations, you become, sort of white.
You do.
It was a melting pot, absolutely. Yeah. I think it is quite interesting. I still struggle a little bit. I still find that jolt. It knocks me out of reality sometimes at the beginning of the series, but by episode 3 you've sort of forgotten about it. But I find young people don't experience that at all. My kids genuinely don't see it. They have no problem.
But it's historical revisionism. I mean, this is something we're airbrushing history to suit modern
it's not really history.
Fiction.
It's a fictional book.
No, but it's not that fictional. You know what I mean?
It is, and you can. Thank God you can.
It's not science fiction.
Thank God you can renew and revise history, or else who wants to see the original production?
But then again, I would say,
I
mean, I kind of prefer this same screenwriter who's done Great Expectations. He wrote Taboo, which was the Tom Hardy thing, which was a completely original thing set in Regency London, another 50 years earlier. That was really extraordinary. I mean, the plot was a bit incoherent, but there were some great scenes, some extraordinary visual entertainment, because it was completely original. And in that, Tom Hardy had come back from Africa where he had mistresses and learned witchcraft and stuff. So it all made sense that it was this kind of big ethnic stew, I think do stuff like that rather than taking, much-loved Dickensian classics and
but your kids
David Copperfield is black now, and if you don't like it, you're racist.
But your kids might not know about that story had they not seen this production, though.
That is possibly true. Scott, a rather sweet story here in the Telegraph that I can see going full rom-com if she wants to sell the rights to this one.
Well, a 29-year-old scientist, she was enrolled in high school because she felt lonely. Hae-jong Shin, she's from South Korea. She came to the U.S. She arrived at the U.S. when she was, I think, much younger, obviously. And she enrolled in the high school, did well at university, got a job, but then went through some hard times. After she graduated from Rutgers in 2017, she got divorced and went into debt, only about $20,000, which really is nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's bad, I should kill myself. And
that's the debt you're expected to get into for a single year of education.
At least.
Yeah.
I mean, God. And she just became disenfranchised with her life and went back to high school because the most comfortable time she felt. I
can understand that. I can remember exactly what age I was at, but I do remember thinking at various points in my 20s and 30s when things got rough, I wonder if I could just go back to school and sort of, not necessarily high school, which would be like 15, but certainly back to university, despite the fact that it was,
I knew a lot of 5-year undergraduates that stayed that 5th year because they really didn't want to go look for work.
And I guess if you've seen Happy Days on TV and you see the Fonz, who's clearly about 40.
The only thing that's unusual is that this is a woman. Loads of men are institutionalized. People want to leave school. Anyway,
she wants to go back to Korea, though.
I wish her well. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. The Daily Mail kicked off with bullish Boris up for the fight. The Guardian, Johnson faces fight for political survival at Partygate hearing. The Financial Times, falling life expectancy triggers delay to raising of state pension age to 68. The Telegraph, hypocrite Starmer to avoid tax on pension. The Times, pill and coil shown to raise breast cancer risk. And we've lost the star. So that's all for your show tonight. Thank you to my guests, Leo Kearse and Scott Capurro. It's been an absolute pleasure. Headliners will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Andrew Doyle in this seat, Josh Howie and Cressida Wetton as his guest. Remember that if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for the breakfast show just after the break. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Good night.